Guys, it is finally time to review the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. And before I really jump into this, and trust me, this is going to be a normal review from my channel, I do want to sort of preface things just a little bit because this is a more complicated review than most of the reviews that I do. And the reason for this is if I just jumped straight into this and I started taking you through this device and I said, how's the screen? How are the speakers? How is the camera? How's the battery life? You would leave this review thinking this is an absolutely top flight excellent phone. But there's context, and that context is really, really important. But likewise, if I spent all my time talking about that context and I didn't just review the phone, you would walk away thinking this is not a very good phone at all. The truth is a combination of the two. So what I want to do is I want to get that context out of the way first, and then I'm going to review the phone. That's going to be really useful to some of you because it's going to give you a great excuse to accuse me of talking out of both sides of my mouth. For many of us, the Samsung Galaxy S whatever Ultra series of phones represented like the pinnacle of mobile technology. Every year when Samsung was going to have a new Ultra phone, going back to the S20 Ultra where it began, we would all sort of watch and they would unveil some crazy feature that would have a lot of our jaws slightly slacked towards the floor. It really felt like Samsung used these phones as an excuse to say, look what we can do, and that was a lot of fun to watch. Go back to that S20 Ultra, a 108 megapixel camera. We had never heard of something like that before in a phone. It was absolutely bonkers. But then on top of that, they had a high resolution, 4x optical zoom that pushed up to 10x hybrid zoom at like a near lossless quality. It felt crazy. And then the very next year, they swapped that out for a 10x optical zoom. They added another camera. That's why we have so many cameras on the backs of these devices already. So the 20 and the 21 were like mind-blowing. And then the S22 Ultra took over for the Galaxy Note series of devices when they added the S Pen to these phones. So we started off with the Ultras truly feeling ultra, feeling special, feeling like that pinnacle. With the 23 Ultra, we did get that 200 megapixel camera, but a lot of other things sort of stayed pretty much the same. The 24 Ultra, we did some things with the telephoto that maybe wasn't like much of an advancement forward. It was more sort of just a re-strategizing of the camera setup, and things stayed pretty much the same. And then the 25 Ultra comes along, and once again, yeah, we have some flat side rails and curved corners, but again, things have stayed pretty much the same. There's a new ultra wide, but not a whole lot. It feels like, in pursuit of an iPhone-like level of refinement, they've lost the spark that made these devices what they were. And I think that it's perfectly reasonable to criticize Samsung for exactly that. However, like I alluded to in the beginning, does that mean that this phone is bad? You can call me a Samsung Knight if you want to, but I think the answer is no. This is not a bad phone. In fact, as you will see as I go through it, it's a really, really good phone. Now, look, should some people probably just buy the S24 Ultra unless you're looking for carrier deals? Maybe you can get it cheaper. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. If you have a 23 or a 24 Ultra, should you be upgrading to this? Almost certainly not. But again, that doesn't make it in a vacuum a bad phone. It makes it a good phone with some complicating context, which hopefully now we all are on the same page on. What we have here is some really, really nice hardware. This phone feels, let's be honest, guys, it's a Samsung phone. You know how it's going to feel. It feels rock solid. It feels like it's extremely well made. It's a little bit lighter than last year, which is really, really great to see. This screen on the front of this thing, I absolutely love. And that anti-reflective coating has been something I have basically fallen in love with. 6.9 inches, 120 hertz, 1440p. I mean, there's just so much to like about this screen. And again, I come back to the fact that it is anti-reflective. And when you go outside with this screen and you compare it to other phones, it is a radical difference. It looks fantastic. You do have stereo speakers here. Everybody always asks, why do people show Crab Rave? Because I'm not going to get a copyright strike, or I'm not going to get my revenue taken by showing this music, and it's really dynamic, so it does work. Those are some pretty darn impressive speakers, guys. They are very, very loud. They do not distort very much at high volumes. There's bass. That's a very full sound. These are very, very good speakers. Of course, you do have the S Pen, and I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact that they did take away the Bluetooth. I guess it's a little bit lighter than it was before, but you no longer have air actions, so you can't hold your button and then wiggle your pen around and have things happen on the device, and you also cannot trigger your camera shutter with your pen anymore. But otherwise, everything else is still there. All of your typical S Pen features are there. I can just do my writing on the lock screen just like that. Air gestures, shutter control, that's pretty much all that you have lost with this change. Some of you are going to care a lot. Some of you are not going to care at all, and that really is just going to depend on you. But by and large, if you're a user of the S Pen, your life is probably not going to change a whole heck of a lot. Samsung said that less than 1% of their users were using those features. Let's talk about the cameras. Now, we have a bunch of them on the back of this device. So there is a 200 megapixel primary camera. There is a 50 megapixel ultra wide, which is new. There is a 10 megapixel 3x telephoto, and there is a 50 megapixel 5x telephoto. So the idea here is that no matter what focal range length you are looking for, no matter how far away your object is within reason, you've probably got a sensor dedicated to doing that really quite well. And I do think Samsung has made some progress this year with basically my only really big problem with their cameras in the past, and that is motion blur. I do want to quickly say, if you want a deep dive into this camera system, not only is there an article on shanecraig.tech, I'll link to it down below, with photo samples, tons of them, which we're actually going to look at a couple of these again. I did a video breaking down all of these photo samples as well, so we're going to be brief on the camera here because I've talked about it a lot already. But I'm just going to tell you, the motion blur problem is much improved. You can see Rose eating her breakfast here, a little bit of kibble and cottage cheese, and this is not a well-lit room at this moment. The studio lights are turned off, and she's moving. She's not being still for this photo, and yet she's relatively well in focus. This is in the range of about how well something like a Pixel phone would have done. I do want to point out that the color profile is a little bit different because I was taking this picture with a filter on. I was kind of playing with those filters, so ignore that. Just look at the focus. This is encouraging. It is so hard to get photos of Jet in focus because she is always moving and she is black. It's very, very hard on cameras to get this. And she's in pretty darn good focus, guys. So again, this has been very encouraging for me. I'll show you my little somewhat scientific test. So I have the S23 Ultra, I have the 25, and the Pixel 9 Pro XL. I'm rolling the ball across the table, and I'm trying to snap a photo in basically all automatic modes and see which one blurs the worst. And as you can see here, the 25 is noticeably better than the 23, and it's almost as good as the Pixel 9 Pro XL. So as close to a scientific test as I can give you, it's improved. And I know that a lot of people are saying that the new ultra wide isn't very much of an improvement, but I wonder how many people are taking their sample shots in poor lighting. This is a sample shot from the new sensor, and that's actually right here over my shoulder. You can see that it's not particularly well lit, and it was actually in the evening, so it's even more poorly lit than that. And when you compare that to the same shot with the old sensor on the S23 Ultra, it is a radical, noticeable difference. The amount of noise and grain, the exposure is just going crazy around this light. That is a really significant improvement. Now that the motion blur thing has seemingly been addressed to some degree, I really don't have any problems with this camera setup. Whether I'm around the house and I'm snapping candid photos of myself or my wife or my dogs, or I'm going out on a hike and I'm doing some bird watching or something like that, where I need to zoom in like 40x to get a shot of an animal or something like that, I'm going to feel quite well prepared with this phone in my pocket. And of course, as this is a Samsung phone, the video performance remains really towards the very top of any Android device. What do you got there, Jet? What do you got? Look how nice and smooth the zoom is compared to some other phones out there. I mean, the Pixel, that would be much more herky-jerky. I've tried it, I've done it. That zoom in while you're filming, stuff like that, it's just much worse on other phones. Video it's going to continue to be a strong suit for these Samsung devices. Is this a camera system that can say that at any one thing it is absolutely the best in the world? No, probably not, but is it in the top handful in most things? Is it able to hold its own against pretty much any phone on the market? Yeah, absolutely. Is it a camera system that's maybe not evolving fast enough, that did most of its evolving 2-3 years ago and has been largely static since? That is absolutely true, and it's fair to criticize it for that, but that doesn't make it today a bad camera system, because it's just not. Let's pivot quickly now and talk about the software. And this is kind of a confusing mixed bag for me. In a lot of ways, what Samsung is doing is very, very good. I will give them a lot of credit for just how smooth everything looks. And like I've said in a prior video, if any of this looks a little less than smooth, it's the way I'm capturing it. I'm doing it live. It makes it easier to record it, but sometimes it'll drop a few frames. But trust me, it is extremely smooth. Your animations look really, really good. I don't have anything negative really to say about any of this stuff. I'm a big fan of the stackable widgets. The fact that I can have my calendar and my little to-do list of video ideas stacked on top of each other without taking up additional space. I wish that was on every Android device. Google, just steal that. How about Samsung DeX? Nothing's really changed with it for a little while, and I have a sneaking suspicion that something is going on involving what Google's doing with desktop modes, and maybe some big changes are coming from that side. But again, it's a really handy feature. If you're out someplace, plugging this thing into a monitor, mouse and keyboard, and you have like a full desktop UI, that is really impressive, even still in 2025. I've even grown to kind of appreciate the Edge panel, where there are all of these potentially cool little tools. How about AI Select, which is brand new? We're just going to go ahead and select all of the text on the screen in this article that I wrote, and let's do Writing Assist because it's AI, and let's click on that Summarize button, and it's going to very quickly summarize that text. How about if it is an image? I genuinely have no idea how well this is going to work, but we're going to do it anyways. We're going to do it live. Let's go ahead and select this image just like that, and we're going to do Drawing Assist, and let's see if it's able to take this image as a general idea, and we're going to turn it into a 3D cartoon. Is it just going to be my face because there's a square on it? Will it include rows? There's no way to know, but there are all of these cool little tools. There you go. So it just honed in on me, and it created a little 3D animation, a little 3D cartoon of me that I will likely never use. But again, there's a lot of stuff packed into these phones. My problem is that a lot of the new stuff that they spend a lot of time hyping is completely useless to me. All right, so this Now Brief thing, good day, click on that, have a good day. It's going to show me the weather, and it says I've spent 12 minutes on my phone while walking. This is completely useless to me. My weather is on the main screen. Sometimes the thing it shows at the bottom is different. Sometimes it's news, but it's news that I don't care about. I don't want this news. It's stuff that's just stressful world news, or it's like, you could watch some YouTube shorts. I don't care about any of that stuff. You can toggle what you want it to be, sort of talking about content to include. But man, it just doesn't really land with me at all. I don't understand this feature. Another feature that I just really don't get, let me go into the clock and I'll start a stopwatch. And then if I lock my device, you'll see down here at the bottom, the now bar, and if I tap on my screen, I can pause that, and I can scroll through. If there's more than one thing that's happening, I can scroll between them, but I don't look at my lock screen. When I look at my lock screen, typically what's going to happen is it's going to unlock my phone anyways because I have Face Unlock turned on, or I'm going to pull my phone out of my pocket, and without even looking at it, I'm just going to unlock it. By the way, I will quickly mention that the fingerprint scanner is spectacular. I am not a big fan of in-screen fingerprint scanners, but this one is probably the best I've ever used. I think in the entire time I've been using this phone, which is several days now, I'm doing a review, so it's been several days, I think it's literally missed twice. It is a spectacularly good fingerprint scanner, but the now bar on the lock screen, absolutely useless. Do you see where it pops up right here? They're getting close to being useful. They're trying not to just be the dynamic island, but it's not quite good enough. I would actually encourage you, if you want something like this, go into the Google Play Store and download something called Dynamic Spot, because it can do very similar things to the dynamic island. As you can see up there at the top, that's where my selfie camera is. And if I click on it, it's going to open up and it's going to have what's playing, and it works with a whole bunch of different applications. And to me, this third-party app is doing it better than this now bar thing is. And even some of the things that I do like Drawing Assist, where you can either pull out your pen and scribble something, or use a photo, or use text to generate an image. That might be the worst sketch of a dog anyone has ever seen, and from that it created this monstrosity. Can't really blame Samsung there, because really it worked off of what I gave it pretty darn well. But in a lot of ways, what Samsung has done here is they took something that Google made, Pixel Studio. They went from 13 different art styles you could use, down to 6, and they added the ability to sketch something. So that's kind of cool. But my point is that a lot of the Samsung features that I like aren't really Samsung features. They're Google features that they reskinned. Their option here in their gallery for generative edit works really, really well. I mean, I can grab Jet and I can move her around and it will fill in that space behind her really, really well. Or this is where they've added their sauce on top. I can do sketch to image and I can try to put a top hat on her head. We'll see how well this works. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But this is just Magic Editor reimagined, but instead of using words to tell it what you want, you are using a sketch. And because I'm not great at sketching, you're going to get weird things. Who is this other dog behind Jet? It created, I don't have another black lab in the house. It created a small cake on her head and made another dog. Now, I did see that they're supposed to be adding the ability to just say what you want. But again, this is my point. They took Magic Editor, they took Reimagine, and they said, let's put an S Pen spin on it. Let's do a Samsung thing with it. And by doing that, they didn't really make it better. They kind of just made it different and sometimes worse. How much time did they spend in their presentation just talking about Google Gemini and how useful Google Gemini can be and all the things that it can do? That's a feature that's there for pretty much every Android device at this point. Their kind of claim to fame was that it can now hook into their apps like Calendar, Notes, and Reminders or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But again, that's just Google Gemini. I think what people are almost lamenting with this device is that it feels like the days of Samsung doing something crazy with their hardware might be over, and the days of Samsung doing crazy things with their software, like launching full desktop interfaces, might also be over. It seems like the only thing they're interested in doing now is taking what Google made and putting a coat of paint on it and then saying this is our new feature and calling it a day. While I don't think that that has resulted in a bad phone, if I said this is your phone for the next year and there's nothing you can do about it, you're going to be fine. This is a really, really good phone. But it just doesn't really feel like Samsung anymore. You know, Samsung hasn't felt like Samsung in a little while. Even their folding phones are the most boring folding phones around. They're the most iterative, slow, glacial pace change folding phones around. And it's just disappointing to see. But you know what isn't disappointing? The battery life on this device. I have, for the last 2 days, absolutely murdered this phone. For me, anything over 5 hours of screen on time is an insanely high use day. For 2 days in a row, I've had over 7 hours of screen on time, unplugging it around 6 or 6:30 in the morning, going to bed around 9 or 9:30 with 15-ish% left, battery savers wanting to turn on. But again, over 7 hours of screen on time. That's with the screen turned up to 1440p, and this is my always on display. So it's not really a normal always on display, like it's showing the wallpaper. So I have really tried to kill this battery, and you can't. The battery life is absolutely outstanding, and I may be crazy, but I swear it feels like this thing charges faster than my S23 Ultra. I think that the numbers are supposed to be the same, but I swear that it charges faster. So battery life charging, totally fine with it. It is an all-day plus phone. So to kind of wrap this thing up, I guess the broad question that I've already answered several times, is this a good phone or a bad phone? This is a really, really good phone. The problem is, if you took the S24 Ultra and released it this year instead, it would also be a really, really good phone. The phone is fast, the battery life is really good, the cameras are really good, the build quality is really good, the software is very polished, there are a metric blank ton of features in here. It is, by all accounts, a very, very good phone, but it just isn't much of a change from last year's phone, which was also a really, really good phone. So what that means to you, what should you do about that? Should you buy it? Should you not? You have to decide that for yourself. I am never going to tell you how to spend your money or what phone to buy. This is simply my analysis. Hopefully it helps you out in some way, and you can decide from there what exactly your course should be. Guys, give me your thoughts in the comments down below about this device. Have you purchased one already? What has your experience been like? What were you upgrading from? All of that is really good and useful context to future viewers and readers of those comments. I will say that if you want to help support the channel and you're going to buy one of these phones, maybe in some way this convinced you that it did make sense for you, using my links in the description or pinned comment down below costs you $0, and it does help support the channel. So if you do that, I do appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.